Lady Arabella Grey was born with noble blood and raised like a dog. 24 years of bruises hidden beneath silk. 24 years of hunger while her family feasted. 24 years of locked rooms and cruel laughter echoing through the halls of Netherwood Manor. Her crime? Being her mother's daughter. Tonight, she crouched in the shadows outside her father's study and heard the words that stopped her heart. Lord Blackwood will pay handsomely for her. Deliver the girl at dawn. Sold. Like livestock. To a monster. The storm raged as she ran. No plan, no money. Just terror and the desperate need to breathe free air before they chained her forever. Rain lashed her face. Thunder swallowed her sobs. She stumbled through the Yorkshire moors until her legs gave out and darkness claimed her. When she woke, she was staring up at him. Duke Reginald Hastings, the tyrant of the north, the man even her father feared. His eyes, cold, dark, lethal, traveled over her bruised face, her trembling hands, her torn nightgown. Then he smiled. Dangerous. Possessive. You're mine now. And everything changed. Thank you for being here. I know you could be anywhere else right now, but you chose to spend your time with me, and that means everything. Tell us where you're watching from. If this story grabbed your heart even a little, please don't leave me wondering. A like tells me you felt something. A subscribe tells me you want more. And a comment? That tells me I'm not alone in loving these dark, desperate romances. It takes 2 seconds, but it makes all the difference to a small creator like me. Please, don't let this be just another video you scroll past and forget. The bruise on Arabella's cheek had faded to a sickly yellow-green. 3 days old. A gift from her stepmother's ring. She pressed her fingers against it, watching her reflection in the cracked mirror of her attic room. Not a room, really. A prison with a bed. The door locked from the outside every night. The window barred. Even the chamber pot was counted, as if she might fashion a weapon from porcelain and desperation. 24 years of this. 24 years since her mother died and her father remarried within 6 months, bringing Lady Constance and her venom into Netherwood Manor. Arabella's stomach growled. Dinner had been bread crusts and water. Again, downstairs, her stepmother and half-siblings would be gorging on roasted pheasant and wine, their laughter rising through the floorboards like smoke. She was the Duke's daughter. She should have been dining with them. Instead, she was the family secret. The inconvenient reminder of the first wife. The ghost Lord Edmund Grey wished he could bury. The servants knew. She saw it in their eyes, pity mixed with fear. They whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. Poor girl. Terrible shame. But they never helped. Helping meant losing their positions. Helping meant Constance's wrath. So Arabella suffered alone. The beatings came when she spoke too loudly, walked too freely, breathed too openly. Constance's hands were quick and brutal. Her father's indifference was worse. He would stand in doorways, watching his wife strike his daughter and say nothing, do nothing, then turn and leave as if Arabella were already dead. Perhaps, in his mind, she was. Tonight, the house was loud with guests. A card party. Arabella heard the clinking of glasses, the rumble of male voices, the sharp, bright laughter of women who had never known hunger. She pressed her ear to the door, listening. Gambling debts are astronomical, Edmund. You must settle them or face ruin. Her father's voice, tight with desperation. I have a solution. Lord Blackwood has expressed interest. Arabella's blood turned cold. Lord Blackwood. She knew that name. Everyone did. A baron twice her father's age with a reputation that made even hardened soldiers grimace. 3 wives, all dead within years of marriage. Whispers of depravity, of cruelty that made Constance look like a saint. Interest in what? Another voice asked. In Arabella. Silence. Then nervous laughter. You can't be serious, Edmund. She's your daughter. She's a burden. Blackwood will pay £10,000. Enough to clear my debts and restore Netherwood's standing. The transaction will be completed at dawn. Transaction. As if she were livestock. Arabella stumbled back from the door, her hand over her mouth to stifle the sound threatening to escape. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. They were selling her. To a monster. At dawn. She looked at the barred window, the locked door, the walls that had caged her for 24 years. Her whole life had been stolen, her childhood, her dignity, her freedom. She had endured because she told herself that one day, somehow, it would end. Tonight, it would end. One way or another. She moved to the window, wrapped her hand in her thin blanket, and punched the glass. It cracked. She punched again. The bars were old, the mortar crumbling. She had nothing but desperation and the knowledge that death on the moors was kinder than whatever waited in Blackwood's bed. The glass shattered. The bar loosened. Tonight, she ran. Or she died. Either way, she would finally be free. Arabella's hands shook as she pressed herself against the cold stone wall, counting heartbeats until the guard's footsteps faded down the corridor. Midnight had come too quickly. Dawn would come quicker still. She moved like a ghost through Netherwood's halls, the same halls where she'd learned to walk silently, to make herself small, to disappear. 24 years of survival had taught her every creaking floorboard, every shadow deep enough to hide in. The west corridor, past her father's study where lamplight still burned beneath the door, past the portrait gallery where her mother's face had once hung before they'd burned it, past the room where Lady Constance slept, probably dreaming of the gold Lord Blackwood would bring. Arabella's chest tightened. She forced herself to breathe. The servants' staircase was narrow and dark. She took it down to the kitchen where embers still glowed in the massive hearth. A cloak hung by the door, thick wool, probably belonging to the groundskeeper. She grabbed it, wrapped it around her shoulders. Freedom was 20 steps away. 15. 10. Going somewhere, sister? Her blood turned to ice. Thomas stood in the doorway to the larder, arms crossed, that familiar, cruel smile playing at his lips. Her half-brother, Lady Constance's golden son, the one who'd held her down while his mother cut off her hair when she was 12. Father will be disappointed, Thomas said, stepping closer. Lord Blackwood arrives at dawn. You wouldn't want to disappoint father, would you? Arabella's fingers found the iron poker by the hearth. Don't, she whispered. Thomas laughed. What are you going to do? Fight me? You. She swung. Not to kill, just to survive. The poker cracked against his shoulder, and Thomas stumbled back with a roar of pain and rage. Arabella didn't wait. She ran. Out the kitchen door. Into the storm. Rain hit her like a wall. Cold, merciless, beautiful. Thunder cracked overhead and she ran harder. Feet slipping in mud. The groundskeeper's cloak heavy with water. Behind her, Thomas was shouting. Lights blazed to life in Netherwood's windows. They'd come for her now. All of them. The moors stretched black and endless before her. No roads. No lights. Just darkness and rain and the taste of freedom sharp as blood in her mouth. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs screamed, until she couldn't hear Thomas anymore. Only thunder and her own ragged breathing and the voice in her head chanting, away, away, away. The stables appeared like a miracle through the rain, a small structure on the edge of the Netherwood grounds. She stumbled inside, gasping. 3 horses. One was old, favoring its left foreleg. But it would have to do. I'm sorry, she whispered, fumbling with the bridle. I'm so sorry. The horse shifted nervously as she let it out. No saddle. No time. She hauled herself onto its back, fingers tangling in its mane. Behind her, through the rain, she heard it. Dogs. The hunting hounds. Her father's pride. Trained to track, to chase, to never stop. Arabella kicked her heels, and the horse lunged forward into the storm. Lightning split the sky, turning the world white for one blazing second. She saw the moors stretching forever, saw the darkness waiting to swallow her, saw freedom or death waiting in equal measure. The horse galloped, uneven but willing. Rain stung her eyes. Thunder drowned out everything. The dogs, the shouts, her own fear. She rode into the black night, not knowing where. Just away. Always away. Behind her, the howling grew closer. Dawn came like a blade, cold, sharp, unforgiving. Arabella lay in the mud where she'd fallen, every breath a knife in her ribs. The horse was gone. Somewhere in the darkness it had stumbled, thrown her hard against the rocks, and bolted into the storm. She couldn't blame it. Blood seeped warm down her temple. Her hands were raw, fingernails torn. The rain had stopped, but the wind cut through her stolen cloak like it was nothing. She had to move. The shepherd's hut appeared through the morning mist, abandoned, half-collapsed, but shelter. She crawled inside and pressed herself into the corner behind a pile of rotting wool sacks, making herself small the way she'd learned as a child. The way her mother had taught her before. No, don't think about that. But the memories came anyway. They always did. She was 7 years old, watching her mother's chest rise and fall in shallow gasps. Fever had taken her so quickly. Lady Constance stood in the doorway, arms crossed, counting the minutes until she could become the new lady of Netherwood. "Mama," Arabella had whispered. Her mother's eyes opened. "Run, little bird. When the time comes, run." 3 days later, her mother was dead. 3 days after that, the beatings began. Hoofbeats thundered past the hut. Arabella froze, barely breathing. Through the gaps in the wooden slats, she saw them, her father's men, spreading across the moors in a wide search pattern, hunting her like an animal. "Check every structure," someone shouted. "Lord Grey wants her found before noon." They passed. She waited, counted to 100, then 100 again. When she was 10, she'd asked Lady Constance why she hated her so much. The answer had been a slap that left her deaf in one ear for a week. When she was 15, she'd tried to run before, made it as far as the village. Her father dragged her back by her hair, locked her in the cellar for 3 days with no food, no light, only rats and her own screaming. When she was 19, they'd taken her mother's portrait from the gallery, the last piece of her Arabella had left. Lady Constance had made her watch as they fed it to the fire, piece by piece. Her mother's smile curling black, her kind eyes disappearing into ash. "You're nothing," Lady Constance had whispered in her ear. "You've always been nothing. Your mother knew it. That's why she left you." Arabella had believed it. For years, she'd believed it. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was nothing. Maybe she should just walk back to Netherwood. Let them hand her to Lord Blackwood. Let whatever happen happen. At least it would be over. At least she'd stop running. At least she'd stop fighting a battle she could never win. She closed her eyes. The cold seeped into her bones. So easy to just stop. Then she heard them. Hoofbeats. But different this time. Not the frantic thunder of search parties. Not the chaos of men shouting orders. These were measured. Deliberate. The sound of a single rider moving with absolute control. Arabella pressed her eye to a gap in the wood. Through the morning mist, she saw him. A man on a black horse, moving across the moor like death itself. He wore a long dark coat that billowed behind him. Even from a distance, she could feel the power radiating from him. Not loud or brutal like her father's rage, but cold and absolute. He stopped, turned his head slowly, scanning the landscape, and looked directly at the hut. Arabella's heart stopped. He couldn't see her. It was impossible. She was hidden in shadow, behind debris, perfectly still. But somehow she knew. He knew she was there. The rider dismounted with fluid grace and began walking toward the hut, each step purposeful and inevitable. Arabella couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The door creaked open. Arabella couldn't stay in the hut. Some instinct, survival or surrender, she didn't know which, drove her to her feet. Better to face whatever came standing than cowering in the dark like a trapped animal. She stumbled through the broken doorway into the gray morning light, and her legs gave out. The world tilted. She hit the muddy road hard, palms scraping against stone. Pain flared up her wrists, but she barely felt it. Exhaustion dragged at her bones, pulled her down like hands reaching up from the earth itself. She tried to rise. Failed. Tried again. "Please," she whispered to no one. To God. To her dead mother. To the wind. "Please, I can't." The hoofbeats stopped. Silence fell across the moor, thick and absolute. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Arabella forced her head up, mud-streaked hair falling across her face. Through the tangled strands, she saw him. The man sat astride a black warhorse that looked like it had been carved from midnight itself. Steam rose from the beast's flanks. Its eyes were intelligent, alert, completely under control, just like its rider. And the rider, even through her exhaustion, even through her fear, Arabella felt something shift in the air. something primal and dangerous and utterly compelling. He was tall, she could tell, even mounted, broad-shouldered beneath a coat so dark it seemed to swallow light. His face was all sharp angles and hard lines, handsome in the way a blade is handsome, beautiful and lethal. Dark hair fell across his forehead, slightly disheveled from riding. But it was his eyes that froze her in place. Dark as midnight, dark as the space between stars. They fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare, like he could see every bruise, every scar, every broken piece of her soul. She knew who he was. Everyone in Yorkshire knew who he was. Duke Reginald Hastings, the Tyrant of the North. The story said he'd killed his own father in a duel, that he'd burned 3 estates to the ground over a perceived slight, that he showed no mercy to his enemies, and less to anyone foolish enough to cross him. They said he was brilliant, ruthless, cold as winter ice. They said he was the most dangerous man in England. And Arabella was kneeling in the mud before him, bloody and broken and completely at his mercy. Time stopped. She couldn't look away from those eyes. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The moment stretched between them like a cord pulled taut, vibrating with something she didn't have a name for. His gaze traveled over her face, the bruise blooming across her cheekbone, the split in her lip, the handprint-shaped marks on her throat barely visible above her torn collar, down to her bleeding palms, her mud-soaked nightgown beneath the stolen cloak, her bare feet cut and blistered. She watched something flicker in his expression, there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. He dismounted. The movement was slow, controlled, graceful as a predator. He never broke eye contact. Not for a second. His boots hit the ground with deliberate weight, and he stood there, tall and imposing and absolutely still, just watching her. Arabella's heart hammered against her ribs. She should run, should beg, should do something. But she couldn't move, couldn't look away. He took a step forward, then another. Each footfall was measured, purposeful, like he had all the time in the world. Like she was prey he'd already caught and was simply claiming now. 3 steps away. 2. He stopped directly in front of her, towering over her kneeling form. This close, she could see the details, the fine fabric of his coat, the silver buttons, the signet ring on his right hand bearing a crest she recognized. The Hastings family seal. Up close, he was even more devastating, more dangerous, more utterly, terrifyingly beautiful. Stand, he said. His voice was low, rough, commanding, the kind of voice that expected obedience and received it. But Arabella's legs wouldn't work. She tried, failed. Shame burned through her exhaustion. I can't, she whispered. I'm sorry, He moved before she could finish. One moment he was standing above her. The next he dropped to one knee in the mud beside her, completely heedless of his expensive coat. His hand reached out, slow enough she could have pulled away if she'd wanted. She didn't. His fingers touched her chin, tilted her face up to his. His skin was warm against hers. Calloused. Strong. Who? He said quietly, dangerously. Did this to you? The question wasn't what she expected. Neither was the controlled fury she heard beneath it. Arabella opened her mouth to answer. Behind them, from across the moor, voices shouted. Dogs barked. Her father's men. They'd found her. Please. The word tore from Arabella's throat, raw and desperate. Please don't send me back. Duke Hastings' eyes narrowed. His hand was still on her chin, keeping her face tilted toward his. She could feel the calluses on his fingertips, the restrained strength in his grip. Back, he repeated, voice soft and deadly. To whom? My father. My family. Her voice broke. They sold me. To Lord Blackwood. I ran, but they're coming and I can't. I can't go back there. Please. I'll do anything. Quiet. Not harsh. Commanding. His thumb brushed across her jaw, feather-light, at odds with everything she'd heard about the Tyrant of the North. His gaze dropped to her throat, to the marks there. She watched his expression darken, watched something cold and terrible settle behind his eyes. Then his attention shifted. He'd heard what she hadn't yet, the hoofbeats growing closer, the shouts becoming clearer. He released her chin and rose to his full height in one fluid motion. Without a word, he moved to stand between her and the approaching riders, his back to her. A wall. A shield. Arabella stayed on her knees in the mud, trembling. Through his legs, she could see them cresting the hill. 6 riders. Her father at the front on his gray stallion, Thomas beside him. And there, her stomach lurched, Lord Blackwood himself, old and cruel-eyed, already looking at her like property he'd purchased. They reined in hard, horses snorting and stamping. Her father's face was mottled red with rage. There, Lord Edmund Grey pointed at her. Seize her. The ungrateful wretch struck my son and fled like a common thief. None of the men moved. They were all staring at Duke Hastings, recognition dawning on their faces. Fear following close behind. Your Grace. Her father's tone changed, became oily with false deference. Forgive the intrusion. We're retrieving my daughter. Family matter. I'm sure you understand. Hastings said nothing. He stood perfectly still, hands relaxed at his sides, but Arabella could feel the danger radiating off him like heat from a forge. Thomas urged his horse forward, emboldened by their numbers. Move aside, Hastings. The girl belongs to. Finish that sentence, Hastings said quietly, and I'll remove your tongue. The threat hung in the air, absolute and terrible. Thomas went white. Lord Blackwood cleared his throat, attempting authority. Now see here. I've paid good gold for the girl. Legal contract with her father. She's mine by right of. Hastings turned his head slightly, just enough to look at Blackwood. Whatever the old lord saw in those dark eyes made him fall silent mid-sentence. There seems to be some confusion, Hastings said, his voice carrying across the moor with perfect clarity. Allow me to clarify. He took one step forward. The men's horses shifted nervously. This woman is under my protection now. She belongs to me. The words struck Arabella like a physical blow. Behind him, she gasped. That's absurd, her father sputtered. She's my daughter. You have no claim. I have every claim. Hastings' voice dropped lower, colder. I'm making it now? Publicly. She is mine. My responsibility. My concern. He paused, letting the words sink in. My property, if you prefer that language. This is outrageous. Lord Blackwood's face purpled. I have a contract. Then I suggest you seek compensation from Lord Grey. The contract is void. The woman is mine. You can't just... Can't I? Hastings tilted his head, the gesture almost curious. Shall we test that theory? You, with your 6 men and your purchased rights. His hand moved to rest casually on the hilt of the sword at his hip. Against me, silence fell like snow. Everyone knew the stories. Everyone knew what the tyrant of the north was capable of. Her father tried a different approach. Your Grace, be reasonable. She's nothing. A worthless girl, disobedient, touched in the head. Why would you want? I'll give you one warning, Grey. Only one. Hastings' voice cut through her father's words like a blade through silk. Return to Netherwood. All of you. Now, if any man here speaks of this woman again, if any man comes looking for her, sends word of her, even thinks her name too loudly, I will burn your estate to the ground and salt the earth where it stood. He took another step forward. The horses backed up. She belongs to me now. Touch her, approach her, or question my claim, and I'll demonstrate exactly why they call me the tyrant. Thomas's hand moved toward his sword. Foolish. Suicidal. Thomas, no. Her father grabbed his son's arm. Wise, Hastings observed. Now leave. While you still can. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Lord Grey jerked his reins, turning his horse. This isn't over, Hastings, he said, trying to salvage some dignity. Oh, but it is. Hastings smiled. It was the most terrifying thing Arabella had ever seen. It's very much over. They left. All of them. Riding back across the moor like dogs with their tails between their legs. Arabella knelt in the mud, shaking, unable to process what had just happened. The most dangerous man in England had just claimed her as his own, and she didn't know if she'd been saved or damned. Arabella expected a dungeon. She'd traded one prison for another. That's what she told herself as Duke Hastings lifted her onto his horse with shocking gentleness, as if she were made of glass. She sat rigid in front of him, acutely aware of his chest against her back, his arms bracketing her sides as he controlled the reins. Easy, he murmured when she flinched. Whether to her or the horse, she didn't know. They rode north. The landscape changed, wilder, more remote. And then, rising from the hills like something from a dark fairy tale, she saw it. Hastings Hall. Not a manor. A fortress. Gray stone walls thick enough to withstand a siege. Towers reaching towards storm-dark clouds. Windows like watching eyes. It looked exactly like the home of a tyrant should look. Imposing, impregnable, forbidding. She was going to die here. Or worse. The gates opened at their approach. Guards nodded but didn't speak. They rode through a courtyard, past stables and training yards, into the shadow of the main keep. Hastings dismounted first, then reached up for her. Come. Her body wouldn't cooperate. 24 years of abuse had taught her what happened in places like this, with men like him. I won't ask again, he said, but his voice held no threat. Almost patient, she let him lift her down. Her legs buckled immediately. He caught her before she fell, swept her into his arms like she weighed nothing. I can walk, she whispered. No, you can't. He was right. She hated that he was right. He carried her through massive doors into a hall that stole her breath. Vaulted ceilings. Tapestries that must have cost fortunes. A grand staircase splitting in two directions. This wasn't a fortress inside, it was a palace. Your Grace. A woman hurried toward them, older, gray-haired, concern etched in her weathered face. Good Lord, what happened? Mrs. Shaw. Prepare the East Wing guest chambers. Hot water, clean linens, food. Send for bandages and salve. Hastings didn't break stride as he climbed the stairs. And burn what she's wearing. Every thread. At once, Your Grace. Arabella's head spun. The East Wing? Guest chambers? She'd expected chains and stone cells. Not. He shouldered through a door, and the world shifted again. The room was enormous. A four-poster bed draped in deep blue silk dominated the space. Windows overlooked gardens that even in their autumn dying were beautiful. A fireplace already laid with wood. Furniture that looked like art. This was grander than anything at Netherwood. Grander than her father's own chambers. Hastings laid her on the bed with surprising care. She sank into softness she'd forgotten existed. I don't understand, she whispered. He looked at her, those dark eyes unreadable. You will. Then he left. Mrs. Shaw appeared moments later with two younger maids carrying buckets of steaming water. The housekeeper's face was kind, genuinely kind, as she shooed the girls out and helped Arabella from her ruined clothes. Let's get you clean, dear, she said softly. Don't you worry. You're safe now. That word again. Safe. Arabella didn't resist as Mrs. Shaw bathed her like a child, washing away mud and blood and the stink of fear. The water turned gray, then brown. The housekeeper's face tightened when she saw the scars. Old ones crisscrossing Arabella's back, faded marks on her ribs, the fresher bruises blooming across her skin. Monsters, Mrs. Shaw muttered. Absolute monsters. She said nothing else. Just cleaned and bandaged and dressed Arabella in a nightgown softer than anything she'd ever touched. Fed her broth that tasted like heaven. Tucked her into bed like she was precious. Sleep now, the housekeeper said. His Grace will want to speak with you later, but rest first. Doctor's orders. Well, my orders, but they're the same thing in this house. She left. Arabella lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of anything. She should run. Should be terrified. Should. Sleep took her under like a wave. She woke to darkness and firelight. Someone was in the room. Her body tensed, ready to fight or flee or... Peace. Hastings' voice, low and quiet. I'm not here to hurt you. He sat in a chair by the fire, face half in shadow. He'd removed his coat. His white shirt was open at the collar, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked tired, almost human. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why are you doing this? He was quiet for a long moment. The fire crackled. Outside, wind howled against the windows. Because no one did it for her, he finally said. My mother. She suffered as you suffered. And when she finally tried to escape, my father killed her for it. His jaw tightened. I was 8 years old. I watched him do it. Watched him break her neck and call it an accident. Arabella's breath caught. I swore that day, No woman would suffer that fate under my watch. Not ever again. He turned to look at her, those dark eyes burning with something fierce and terrible and protective. You're safe here, Lady Arabella. In this house, under my protection, you are safe. No one will hurt you again. This I swear on my mother's grave. The absolute certainty in his voice broke something inside her. For the first time since her own mother died, Arabella believed someone. She believed him, and she began to cry. He didn't move from his chair, didn't try to touch her or comfort her. He just sat there, a silent guardian in the dark, while she wept for everything she'd lost and everything she'd survived. When she finally slept again, he was still there, watching over her, keeping her safe. 3 days passed before Arabella could walk without trembling. A week before the bruises faded from purple to yellow-green. 2 weeks before she stopped flinching at sudden movements. Hastings Hall was nothing like she'd imagined. The servants were kind, genuinely kind, not the false smiles hiding contempt she'd known at Netherwood. Mrs. Shaw fussed over her like a mother hen. The maids brought her books when she mentioned loving to read. No one locked her door at night. And the Duke was an enigma wrapped in darkness and contradictions. She saw him every evening. He'd appear at dinner, formal, controlled, impeccably dressed, and they'd eat in the smaller dining room, not the cavernous great hall. At first, the silence had been suffocating, but slowly, conversation emerged. You read Latin? He'd asked the fourth night, noticing the book in her hands. My mother taught me. Before Arabella had swallowed hard. Yes, I read Latin. Something flickered in his eyes. Approval? Respect? The library is yours. Take whatever you wish. The library. 3 floors of books. More knowledge than she'd ever dreamed of touching. He asked about her mother. She told him, haltingly at first, then with growing confidence. About how her mother had been kind and educated and beautiful. How she died when Arabella was 7. How everything had changed after. He listened. Actually listened. Didn't interrupt or dismiss or tell her to stop dwelling on the past. And slowly, piece by piece, he revealed himself too. My father was a decorated war hero, Reginald said one evening, staring into his wine. The world loved him. They called him honorable, brave, a true gentleman. His jaw tightened. Behind closed doors, he was a monster. My mother bore it for years. The beatings, the cruelty. She stayed because she thought it would protect me. It didn't, Arabella said quietly. No, it didn't. He looked at her then, and she saw the 8-year-old boy behind the tyrant's eyes. When she finally tried to leave, take me with her, he caught us at the stables. Threw me against the wall. When I woke up, she was dead. He told everyone she'd fallen from her horse. But you knew. I knew. He set down his wine glass with careful precision. I was too young, too weak to stop him then. But I swore I'd never be weak again. Never let another woman suffer what she suffered. Never become what he was. Is that why they call you the Tyrant? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I earned that name. Made enemies of powerful men who thought their titles gave them the right to brutalize their wives, their daughters, their servants. I ruined them. Systematically. Without mercy. He met her gaze. I won't apologize for it. I'm not asking you to. Something shifted between them in that moment. Understanding. Recognition. They were both survivors of monsters wearing noble faces. The days took on a rhythm. Mornings in the library. Afternoons walking the grounds when her strength allowed. Evenings with Reginald, talking of books and philosophy, and everything except the future neither of them wanted to name. She was a guest, he said, under his protection, free to leave whenever she wished. But where would she go? And more troubling, did she want to go? It was the garden that undid her. She'd noticed it from her window, a walled section behind the east wing, wild and overgrown. One afternoon, curiosity won over caution. She slipped through the gate and froze. Roses, dozens of them. Some blooming even in late autumn, others dormant, waiting for spring. White roses, pink roses, deep crimson roses climbing up trellises and tumbling over stone benches. Her mother had grown roses. The only beauty allowed in her prison had been her rose garden at Netherwood, until Lady Constance had them all torn out. Your mother loved roses. Arabella spun. Reginald stood in the gateway, still in his riding clothes, dark hair windswept. He must have just returned. How did you? You mentioned it. Once. Weeks ago. He moved into the garden, running his fingers along a trellis. This was my mother's garden. She planted it herself. My father let it die after. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. I restored it. 5 years ago. Brought in every variety I could find. Arabella's throat tightened. Why? Because she loved beautiful things. Because she deserved to be remembered by something other than how she died. He plucked a white rose, examined it. Because sometimes the dead haunt us less when we honor what they loved. He turned to her, offering the rose. Their fingers brushed as she took it. The touch lasted a moment too long. Neither pulled away. You tend it yourself, she said. It wasn't a question. She'd seen dirt under his fingernails at dinner. Noticed how he always knew which plants needed water, which needed pruning. The gardener's help. But yes. He smiled, actually smiled, small and real. It seems the Tyrant of the North has a secret. I garden. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside her. Unexpected, rusty from disuse, but genuine. His smile widened. There. I wondered what your laugh sounded like. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Arabella didn't have a name for, or didn't want a name. She was falling for him. God help her. She was falling for the man the world called a monster. The man who'd claimed her like property, but treated her like she was precious. The man who'd saved her and asked nothing in return. The man who tended roses because his mother had loved them. Reginald, she said softly, using his name for the first time. His eyes darkened. Yes. Thank you. For, she gestured helplessly. Everything. For seeing me. For, don't. His voice was rough. Don't thank me for basic human decency. Don't thank me for doing what any honorable man should do. But you're not any man. She stepped closer. Brave or foolish, she didn't know. You're a tyrant, a brute, a man who's ruined lives and made enemies and earned every dark story they tell about him. He didn't step back. Don't romanticize what I am, Arabella. Don't mistake protection for something it's not. Then what is it? He stared at her, jaw working like he was fighting some internal battle. The wind picked up, sending rose petals skittering across the flagstones. In the distance, thunder rumbled. It's me, he finally said, voice low and fierce, trying desperately not to become another man who takes what he wants without asking. It's me trying to give you choice when you've never had it. It's me fighting every instinct that says you're mine and I should claim you properly and damn the consequences. Her breath caught. And if I wanted you to? Arabella. I'm not a child, Reginald. I'm 24 years old. I know my own mind. Her hand trembled, but she reached up, touched his jaw. He went rigid under her fingers. You saved me. You've been nothing but honorable. But that's not why I. She didn't finish. Couldn't find the words. So she showed him instead. She rose on her toes and kissed him. For one heartbeat, he was stone. Frozen. Unresponsive. Then he broke. His arms came around her, pulling her against him, and he kissed her back with a hunger that stole her breath. Nothing gentle about it. Nothing controlled. Just raw need and barely leashed desire, and something that felt terrifyingly like devotion. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. You're going to destroy me, he whispered. Good, she whispered back. You destroyed me first. Built me back differently. Arabella, I'm not your captive, Reginald. You said so yourself. I'm here by choice. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. And I choose you. I choose this. Whatever this is. He studied her face like he was memorizing it. Then, slowly, reverently, he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Then stay, he said. Not as my ward. Not as someone under my protection. Stay as, whatever you want to be. What do you want me to be? His thumb traced her lower lip. Mine. God help me. I want you to be mine. Then I'm yours. The words hung between them. A promise and a claiming and a choice freely made. He kissed her again, softer this time. Sweeter. Like she was something precious he'd been given and couldn't quite believe he deserved. In the garden where his mother's roses bloomed, where beauty grew from tragedy, Arabella Grey fell completely in love with the Tyrant of the North. And for the first time in 17 years, she felt truly free. The gates of Hastings Hall shook under the pounding. Open! In the name of Lord Edmund Grey and by order of the Crown. Arabella stood at the window of her chamber now, not a guest room, but truly hers, and watched the army assemble below. 50 men at least. Her father's bannermen mixed with hired soldiers. And at the front, mounted on a white destrier that seemed absurd for his age, Lord Blackwood in full armor. They'd come for war. My lady, Mrs. Shaw appeared in the doorway, wringing her hands. His Grace asks that you remain here. Safe. He's preparing to fight. Arabella's voice was steady. Strange how calm she felt. A month ago, she would have been terrified. Now she was furious. Where is he? The courtyard. But my lady, he said. Arabella was already moving. She found him armed and armored, checking the defenses with his captain of the guard. He'd gathered perhaps 30 men, fewer than her father's force, but these were trained soldiers, loyal and disciplined. The difference showed in their faces. Reginald. He turned, and his expression shifted from cold command to something softer. I told Mrs. Shaw to keep you inside. Mrs. Shaw isn't my jailer. Neither are you. She crossed to him, ignoring the stares of the soldiers. What are they demanding? His jaw tightened. Your return. Compensation for breach of contract. An apology. He paused. My head on a pike, ideally. They don't have the authority. They claim they do. Your father's petitioned the Crown. Says I abducted you, coerced you. Lord Blackwood's added charges of theft. Apparently your property he legally purchased. Reginald's voice dripped with contempt. And they've brought a magistrate. Official papers. Witness testimony from your stepbrother. All lies. I know that. You know that. He touched her face gently, at odds with the armor he wore. But the law is rarely about truth. It's about power and precedent. And your father has friends in court. So we fight. I fight. You stay safe behind these walls where they can't. No. He blinked. Arabella. I said no. She grabbed his gauntlet hand. This isn't just your battle. It's mine. It's always been mine. And I'm done hiding while men decide my fate. If this goes poorly, if they breach the walls, then we fall together. She met his eyes, unflinching. But I won't cower in a tower while you defend my right to exist freely. I won't let them tell more lies about me without speaking truth to their faces. Pride blazed in his expression. And something else. Love, raw and fierce. You're remarkable, he said softly. And stubborn as hell. I learned from the best. He kissed her, brief and hard. Stay close to me. Whatever happens. Always. They walked to the gates together. Reginald gave a signal, and the great doors swung open. Her father sat on his gray stallion, looking older than she remembered. Angrier. Lord Blackwood was beside him, dressed like he was attending a tournament rather than a siege. Thomas lurked behind, sporting a bandage where she'd struck him with the poker. And there, in magistrate's robes, a thin man with papers clutched in his hands like a shield. Hastings, her father bellowed. Your time is up. Return my daughter, pay the compensation owed to Lord Blackwood, and submit to the king's justice. Or face the consequences. Reginald said nothing. He simply stood there, immovable as the stone walls behind him, one hand resting on his sword hilt. I have a warrant, the magistrate called, voice shaking. Signed by Lord Chancellor himself. You must comply or be named outlaw, and let me see this warrant. The magistrate hesitated, then dismounted and approached nervously. He thrust the papers at Reginald, who examined them with infuriating calm. Interesting, Reginald said after a moment. These claim Lady Arabella was abducted by force, held against her will, coerced and imprisoned. Exactly, her father said. So you admit. I admit nothing. Reginald looked up, his smile cold as winter. Because the lady in question is standing right here. Unshackled. Unharmed. Free to speak for herself. All eyes turned to Arabella. Her father's face twisted. Arabella. Daughter. Come here. Now. Before this madman. Madman. The word escaped her like a laugh. You're calling him mad? You, who sold your own daughter like cattle. You, who let your wife beat me for 17 years. You, who locked me in cellars and burned my mother's portrait and told me I was worthless every day of my life. Silence fell across the courtyard. Arabella, her father said, voice dangerously low. Control yourself. You're hysterical. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. She stepped forward, out from behind Reginald's protective presence. Her heart hammered, but her voice didn't shake. I'm saying you were never a father to me. Lady Constance was never a mother. Thomas was never a brother. You were jailers, torturers, and I escaped. You were stolen. I ran. Her voice echoed off stone. I ran from you. From Lord Blackwood and his filthy gold. From a life of misery and degradation. And when I collapsed on that road, Duke Hastings didn't abduct me. He didn't coerce me. He saved my life. Lord Blackwood's horse shifted nervously. The contract is void. Arabella turned to face him, this old man who'd thought to purchase her like a broodmare. You cannot buy what was never for sale. I am not property. I am not goods to be traded. I am a human being, and I refuse. You refuse. Her father's laugh was ugly. You have no right to refuse. I am your father. You are bound by law and blood to obey. I renounce you. The words came clear and strong. I, Lady Arabella Grey, renounce my family, my name, and any claim you have upon me. I declare myself free of House Grey and under the sole protection of Duke Reginald Hastings. Gasps rippled through both forces. You can't. That's not, her father sputtered. She can, Reginald said quietly, dangerously. And she has. Witnessed by 60 men, a magistrate, and God himself. Arabella turned to look at Reginald, found his eyes blazing with pride and possession and love so fierce it stole her breath. I choose him, she said, speaking to the magistrate now. I choose Duke Hastings. Not because I'm coerced or frightened or imprisoned. Because he saw me as human when my own blood saw me as a burden. Because he protected me when you tried to destroy me. Because he is a better man than any of you will ever be. She stepped closer to Reginald, and his arm came around her waist immediately, claiming, protecting. So take your warrant and your soldiers and your lies, Arabella continued, and leave, because I'm not going anywhere. The magistrate looked at the papers, then at her father. My Lord Grey, if the lady speaks freely, without coercion, the law is clear. She has reached her majority. She can renounce family ties and choose her own guardian. This is outrageous. This is justice, Reginald said. Now leave my lands. All of you. Before I decide that threatening my household deserves a harsher response than words. His 30 men moved forward as one. Disciplined. Ready. Her father's hired soldiers looked at each other. The math was simple. They were mercenaries paid to intimidate, not die for someone's injured pride. This isn't over, Hastings, her father spat. I'll see you ruined for this. You and that ungrateful whore. Reginald moved so fast Arabella barely saw it. One moment he was beside her, the next he had her father by the throat, dragged half off his horse. Call her that again, Reginald said, voice deadly soft. And I'll kill you where you sit. Warrant or no warrant. Consequences be damned. Do you understand me? Her father nodded frantically, face purpling. Reginald released him. Lord Grey fell back into his saddle, gasping. Leave. Now. And pray I never see your face again. They left. Slowly, with as much dignity as they could salvage, but they left. The army dispersed. The threat dissolved like morning mist. Arabella stood in the courtyard, shaking with adrenaline and triumph and disbelief at what she'd done. Arabella. Reginald turned her to face him. That was terrifying. I was going to say magnificent. His hands cupped her face. You were magnificent. Fearless. I was terrified. Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I have never been more proud. Or more certain. Certain of what? That you were always meant to be mine. He pulled her close, held her like she was precious beyond measure. You were never his to give away, Arabella. You were never anyone's to claim. You chose me. Freely. Publicly. And God help anyone who tries to take you from me now. She buried her face in his chest, felt his heart beating strong and steady against her cheek. "I was always yours," she whispered. "Even before I knew it. Even when I was running. I was running toward you." That night, after the soldiers dispersed and the gates closed and Hastings Hall settled into peace, he came to her chamber. Not to take, not to claim what he'd called his, just to hold her while she cried tears of relief and freedom and joy. "You're safe," he whispered into her hair. Finally, truly safe. And loved. So desperately loved. "I love you too," she said. "My tyrant. My savior. My choice." And in the darkness, surrounded by walls that protected instead of imprisoned, Arabella Grey, no, just Arabella now, finally came home. Winter came early to Yorkshire that year. Snow dusted the moors, turning the wild landscape into something soft and forgiving. From her window at Hastings Hall, Arabella watched it fall and marveled at how different the world looked now. How different she felt. 6 weeks had passed since the confrontation at the gates. 6 weeks since she'd renounced her family and chosen her own fate. The aftermath had been swift and brutal, but not for her. Word spread quickly through Yorkshire and beyond. A duke's daughter publicly denouncing her family, claiming abuse, choosing the protection of the notorious tyrant of the North. Society had devoured the scandal like starving wolves. Lord Blackwood's reputation crumbled first. An investigation into his legal contracts revealed a pattern. Young women purchased from desperate families, many of whom had since disappeared. He was arrested within a fortnight, his estate seized, his name destroyed. Her father and Lady Constance fared little better. Without Lord Blackwood's gold to pay their debts, without Arabella to sell off, their finances collapsed. Servants came forward with stories of cruelty. The magistrate who'd brought that false warrant quietly retracted it after reviewing new evidence. Thomas fled to the continent, chasing rumors of mercenary work. Netherwood Manor stood empty now, a monument to their fall. Arabella had felt nothing when Mrs. Shaw told her. No satisfaction, no vindication, just relief. That chapter of her life was closed. Finished. She could finally stop looking over her shoulder. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and made her way through the halls of Hastings Hall, her halls now. Reginald had made that clear in a dozen ways. Her rooms, her books in the library, her seat at his table, her name spoken by the servants with respect and warmth. The rose garden drew her as it always did. Even in winter, it held beauty, frost turning the dormant bushes into crystalline sculptures, snow settling soft on stone benches, evergreen hedges providing structure and life. She stood in the center of it all, breathing cold air that didn't hurt anymore. Free air. Safe air. "I thought I'd find you here." His voice wrapped around her like a warm cloak. She didn't turn, just smiled as she felt him approach, felt the heat of him at her back. Reginald's arms came around her waist, pulling her against his chest. He rested his chin on top of her head, and they stood there in comfortable silence, watching snow fall on sleeping roses. "Mrs. Shaw says you've been out here every morning this week," he murmured. "She's worried you'll catch cold." "Mrs. Shaw worries about everything. She cares about you. As do I." He tightened his hold slightly. "Do you regret it?" "Regret what?" "Running to me." His voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. "Choosing this life. Some days I wonder if you'd have been better off running somewhere else. Somewhere far from Yorkshire, from your father, from me." Arabella turned in his arms, needing to see his face. The tyrant of the North looked uncertain, actually uncertain, and it cracked something open in her chest. "Reginald Hastings," she said, reaching up to touch his jaw. "Are you asking if I regret choosing you?" "I'm asking if you're happy." He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. "I claimed you that day on the moor, announced to the world that you were mine. But I never asked what you wanted. Not truly. I gave you a choice between me and them. But that's not really a choice at all." "You're right." He flinched. "It wasn't a choice," she continued, watching his eyes. "Because there was never any question. Not really. From the moment you knelt in the mud beside me, from the moment you looked at me like I was human instead of trash, from the moment you stood between me and them." She smiled, feeling tears prick her eyes. "You weren't an option, Reginald. You were the only answer I'd been searching for my entire life." Arabella, I regret so much, she whispered. I regret every year I spent at Netherwood believing I deserved their cruelty. I regret every night I prayed for rescue instead of saving myself sooner. I regret every moment I let them convince me I was worthless. She pulled his face down to hers. But running to you, choosing you, loving you, those are the only things I don't regret. The only things I'd do again in a heartbeat. He kissed her then, deep and possessive and achingly gentle all at once. His hands tangled in her hair, cradled her face like she was made of spun glass and starlight. When they finally broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. I love you, he breathed. God, Arabella, I love you so much it terrifies me. I look at you and I see everything I don't deserve. Everything I'd burn the world to protect. Then it's fortunate, she said, smiling through tears, that I love you too. My tyrant, my protector, my home. Your home, he repeated, tasting the words. Is that what this is to you? You are my home. Not these walls. Not this garden. You. She kissed him again, soft and sweet. Wherever you are, that's where I belong. He pulled back just enough to look at her properly, and she saw it. The fierce possessiveness, the desperate love, the bone-deep need to keep her safe mixed with the growing trust that she wouldn't shatter if he held too tight. Mine, he said. Not a question. A statement. A promise. Yours, she agreed. Always was. Always will be. Even when I'm difficult. Especially then. Even when society whispers about the tyrant and his runaway bride. Let them whisper. I stopped caring what people think the day I chose myself. He laughed. Actually laughed. Deep and genuine and beautiful. You're going to destroy me, Arabella. Completely unmake everything I thought I was. Good. She grinned up at him. You destroyed me first. Built me back into someone I actually want to be. Snow continued to fall around them, catching in her hair, on his shoulders, melting against the warmth where their bodies pressed together. In the distance, Hastings Hall stood strong and solid, no longer a fortress but a sanctuary. Marry me, Reginald said suddenly. Arabella blinked. What? Marry me? Not because I claimed you, or because you need protection, or because society expects it. He took both her hands in his. Marry me because I love you beyond reason. Because I want to wake up beside you for the rest of my life. Because I want everyone to know that you chose me as much as I chose you. Her heart stuttered. That's, you're asking? I'm begging. His smile was crooked, vulnerable, nothing like the tyrant the world feared. I'm on my knees if you need me to be. I don't need you on your knees. She cupped his face with both hands. I just need you honest. So tell me, is this what you want? Truly. More than breathing. Then yes. Joy bloomed in her chest, bright and warm and overwhelming. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll be your wife, your partner, your equal. I'll stand beside you and love you and probably drive you mad with stubbornness. I'm counting on it. He kissed her again, and this time it was celebration and promise and future all wrapped into one perfect moment. When he lifted her and spun her around, her laugh echoed through the garden. Free and genuine, and so different from the broken girl who'd collapsed on a muddy road 6 weeks ago. I love you, she said again, because she could. Because she was allowed. Because he was hers, and she was his, and nobody could take that away. I love you, he echoed. My Arabella. My fierce, stubborn, magnificent Arabella. They stood in the rose garden as snow fell soft around them. Two people who'd survived their own monsters and found each other in the aftermath. Two people who'd chosen love over fear, freedom over chains, each other over everything else. And for the first time since her mother died, for the first time in 17 years, Arabella felt completely, utterly, perfectly home. Not in a place. In a person. In the arms of the man the world called a tyrant, but who'd given her the one thing she'd never had. Choice. Safety. Love. Come inside, Reginald murmured against her hair. Before Mrs. Shaw sends out a search party. In a moment, Arabella tilted her face up to the falling snow, to the gray sky, to the future spreading bright before her. I just want to remember this. How it feels to be free, to be loved, to be home. Then we'll stay as long as you need. And they did. Standing in a winter garden where roses slept and waited for spring, where snow covered old scars and promised new beginnings, where two broken people had found each other and chosen to be whole together. The tyrant and his lady. The monster and the girl who taught him he could be more. The beginning of their always.